Welcome to the Dance is Medicine podcast. My name is Sophia Celine. I'm a dance neuroscientist and dance healer, and I've created this podcast to share stories from dancers who have used dance to cope or heal health problems they have. I think science is important, but the stories play a big part on this, and that's why I created this podcast. Today, I have a very interesting guest, Terri. She has won many awards. She's a very inspiring dancer and she has a beautiful background in her dance career. And she has been coping with a stroke she had in 2017. And she also has a heart valve disease that is what caused that stroke. Dance has been a helpful way to deal with her health problems and gave her the drive to work through everything she had to go through. So I'm really excited to hear her story in more detail, and I want to be able to also introduce this story in a way that is also very inspiring, because the fact that Terri went through so many hardships and yet she has achieved so much as a dancer until today, it's very, very, very inspiring. So Terri, would you like us to tell more in detail your dance background, which I think is amazing, and also how has dance has helped you?
Hi, thank you for asking me to tell my story. I did dance as a kid. I danced old-time ballroom, so I danced the classical stuff, waltz, volita, and military two-step. But age 16, I gave that up, concentrated on my schooling, and I didn't revisit dance until I was well over 60. And I started dancing to re-establish a social life after a pretty disastrous relationship. Never ever thought that I would dance competitively. I didn't believe I had a competitive bone in my body, but they took me along to a competition for ballroom and Latin, and I sat on the sidelines and watched and thought, oh, I want to do this. I so want to do this. So that was in 2012 when I started dancing again. I was coming up 62. Sorry, no, I was in my 50s, and I didn't do very much. And I didn't do much until I moved to Leicestershire and joined my current school with Glenn Badham. And I came up here in 2014, first competed with Glenn at Blackpool in 2015, where I won the my category in the ballroom, and got to the final in the Latin. And 2016 saw me win again in the ballroom and come second in the Latin. And 2017, I was working really hard on my dance. I was finding jive incredibly difficult because for some reason I just couldn't get my breathing right. I didn't know what was wrong. I thought I was just incredibly lazy because I wasn't getting fit enough, quick enough. So I went on a fitness program so that when I hit Blackpool in November, I was going to be as fit as I possibly could be. Dance very much was the focus of my life. Everything hung around my weekly dance lessons and my periodic sessions with Julie Tompkins, where she tried to get me to understand Latin. So September came, and I'd had a weekend in North Wales with the grandchildren and my son, and I'd been really seriously breathless. I didn't know what was wrong. I was taking 2 steps up the hill and having to stop. in the end, I turned around and went back down and said to the kids, you know, I'll meet you down there. Anyway, the following weekend, I'd felt really washed out. And I was looking after the grandchildren with my son. And Amelia, my granddaughter, wanted to go to the loo, so I took her back to the house to take her to the toilet. I felt really odd. I felt like I was falling down a tunnel. Everything was receding from me. Weirdest sensation. And I smelt electrical burning. Apparently, when you have these sort of things happen, you very often get odd sensory perceptions. And I turned to my son and said, Robin, please call an ambulance. I think I'm having a stroke. And he took one look at my face and both sides of my mouth dropped. And he called the ambulance. I was perfectly all right, apart from the fact that I could not talk. I couldn't string together any words. I tried to imagine reading them from a piece of paper, but I couldn't say them. I could think them, I could pretend to read them, but garbage was coming out of my mouth. I could think logically. I took myself off to the toilet and I packed my things in my handbag and I had a drink of water and I made sure I had everything I needed with me and waited for the ambulance. When the ambulance got there, of course, they were trying to ask me questions and I couldn't respond. I could, however, swear. The oddest thing was my logical speech center had completely departed, but my emotional speech center was fully up and running and I could swear like a trooper. They put me in the ambulance, did a 12 lead on my heart. They were concerned because something was going on there, but they didn't know what it was. It wasn't a typical presentation. I went into hospital on blues and twos, breaking all the speed limits down the main road into Leicester, and got into A&E. And this I found quite terrifying. I was in A&E and an A&E doctor came up to me and said, Madam, you're having a panic attack. And the two ambulance girls had to hold on to me because I was trying to get out of the bed and grab him by the throat because I couldn't tell him that I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk. So luckily, the consultant from the stroke ward was expecting me and he hove into sight and he politely told this little doctor to go away and fix broken legs. And they whisked me up to the ward and I was put on thrombolysis, which is the clot busting medicine, and retired to bed with 15-minute checks because they were worried that I had something else going on. They didn't know what it was. While I was in there, they scanned all my major arteries to see if I'd had a clot from cholesterol. I hadn't. And as a matter of course, they investigated the heart trace and found an abnormality. So they investigated that and told me that the cause of my clot was the fact that I had a faulty heart valve. And that heart valve had caused blood, it wasn't letting blood through quick enough. So blood was pooling in one chamber of my heart. And because it wasn't being moved, it clotted. And then that clot broke away and went up to my brain and it hit my logical speech center, which was deep on the left-hand side of the brain. And it was only picked up by an MRI scan, which, trust me, is the weirdest thing in the world when you put in the scanner. It's odd. Anyway, they found out what it was. There I am lying in bed, and it suddenly occurs to me that the next day is a dance workshop. So I'm frantically trying to get a hold of my phone to send my apologies that, you know, I wouldn't be able to join the class and I wouldn't be able to have my private lesson. And that actually was the only lesson I missed, because once they discovered what it was that had caused the stroke, they put me on blood thinners, they put me on statins, and told me to drink more water and packed me off home after 36 hours. I wasn't really with it at that point. I could talk, my voice was slurred, but I could talk. At no point had I suffered any muscle weakness, although they reported I had slight right side weakness. So they sent me home, and I was on my own at home, so I was looking after myself, and I sat on the sofa and thought, gosh, I'm 60, coming up to 66, and I've had a stroke. I'm an old lady. I've got a heart valve defect. I'm an old lady. And then I thought, hang on a minute. I had that heart valve issue before the stroke. I've had it apparently for years, decades even. So I'm not any different to how I was before, except for the fact I wasn't allowed to drive for a month. So I got myself, I gave myself a serious talking to, sat there on the sofa. I had my half hour of feeling sorry for myself, and then I thought, no, there's two choices here. I can become a stroke victim or a stroke survivor. And this had happened on September the 23rd, and Blackpool was on November the 4th. I wasn't going to waste a year's work of hard graft and not go to Blackpool. So I rang up my dance instructor and I said, I want to come for my dance lesson on Wednesday. Can you pick me up, because I can't drive? And he could, and he did. And we arranged people to pick me up and take me back. And he told me afterwards, frankly, it was terrifying trying to get me to do things, because part of me was there, present, but I wasn't as connected up as I usually was. So they had to redo my jive routine, and they had to revisit my ballroom to make sure that I could do both without overstressing my heart, because that was now the limiting factor. So I couldn't afford to get breathless. And you know what my two dances were for Blackpool? Viennese waltz, which has got to be the most taxing dance on the planet in modern ballroom, followed by tango. And in the Latin, it was jive. So I was on a hiding to nothing, for both those were going to tax me if I was pretty well. Carrying this psychological burden as well as a physical burden, it was going to be a challenge. And my instructors were worried that I would do my usual thing and overtax myself and then have another funny turn. And I promised them that if I felt bad, I would not go on the floor. So we had a safety word that I could say while I was dancing. And we had a routine that I had to stick to make sure I was drinking, make sure I was taking my meds, make sure I was resting in between rounds, make sure I wasn't getting overheated. Blackpool came. Those 6 weeks were my pathway to recovery. Each lesson was a milestone, and it still gets me emotional talking about it, but
It's okay, Terry, if you need to take a little second and just,
It's all
yeah,
right. It's so real.
yeah, yeah,
So we got through it. The way Blackpool works is the first round of the ballroom in the over 65, because there were only 6, it was a straight final. You do the first round without being judged. It's like a warm-up. The Viennese was the first round, and it's my favorite dance. I'm passionate about it. And we got a standing ovation when we came off the floor. The second round was tango, and Glenn said, that's my teacher, he said, I knew we had it after the opening bars. You just were right there with me, and we nailed that opening sequence. And I saw out of the corner of my eye, all the judges mark you down as first and then go around looking at the other people. However, yes, I won the ballroom, and then I had to get changed for the Latin. And I didn't tell anybody, but I was in a pretty poor state after the ballroom. Getting into my Latin costume, I had to take a break, calm myself down, have something to eat, get dressed, and then warm up slowly. And of course, typically, with it being jive, there was more than one round. I think it was 3 or 4 rounds of doing that jive. And I came second. And that's my worst dance. So I was dead chuffed with that. Dance actually pulled me through that, stopped me becoming a victim, and gave me back my personality, because I could have, sat on the sofa and done crochet. But I wouldn't allow it. And from then on, I've worked with fitness instructors and with my dance coaches to enable me to look after my heart by being as fit as I possibly can be, and by being as aware of my diet and my routine fitness programs, my fluid intake. And then we did the Pro-Am after Christmas, and I won that. That was my first entry into Pro-Am. And then I was supposed to go for a cardiology appointment to find out exactly what was wrong with my heart, and it kept getting cancelled. And then I lost my father to heart valve disease. So I then went to my GP and said, look, this is what's happened. I've lost my dad to what I've got. So can you please ensure that I've got an appointment with my cardiologist, because it should have been in January and it's now April. I was seen 3 days later, and my cardiologist explained that the left side of my heart, the valve between the top and bottom chambers, one side of it had stiffened up, it had got calcified. So only half the valve is working. One side opens and the other side doesn't. So consequently, my top chamber gets full of blood from my lungs, and then it's bottled there until enough goes through the bottom chamber, into the bottom chamber, for it to contract and go around the body, which is why I've never been able to get really fit, because there's not enough blood going around my body to keep my muscles working. So it's good to know. And so we launched a completely different training regime for me learning dance, slightly changed some of my routines, like in the quick step, so that I wasn't doing lots of bouncing around and and leaping around the floor so that I could keep my breathing regular. And from then on, I've been undefeated in the ballroom and finally started winning in Latin. And it's all down to the fact that dance gave me the targets, short and long term, to keep pushing my personal boundaries, to keep putting one foot in front of the other in the correct way, so that I could usefully, constructively work with my limitations to be the best I possibly could be. And I'm blessed with the fact that I've had an absolutely brilliant teacher and visiting trainers who've all taken on board my particular quirks and foibles and worked with me on it. And during COVID, for more or less a year, I haven't had a proper dance lesson. For just over a year, we've had no competitions in the UK. And I feel like somebody's chopped my arm off, because that dance time was me time, where I could be the person I was in my imagination. So that's my story. Sorry if I got a bit choked.
No, that's absolutely fine. I'm getting a bit emotional as well listening to what he's saying. And I just want to thank you so much, because it's so brave for you to tell this story that really, it's really hard to tell, because it's a really hard story to tell. And for you to be here and sharing it, I'm so thankful that you agreed to be here and sharing this with me. Actually, I'm so grateful. And I think you can inspire a lot of people. I'm sure the people who are listening, even if they are not going through something similar, they can get really inspired. And for me, as soon as I read your story when you sent me, I was like, oh my god, this is so inspiring. It definitely has to be on the podcast. And you as a person, you're very inspiring, I think. And the fact that you have pushed through, and I loved how you said, I wanted to be a survivor, not a victim. That is so amazing. That is so crucial. And that really dictated how you went from there. And the fact that you have still won so many things, you built a beautiful career in dance that you should be so proud of. And you never have let age or health problems get in the way. But I love how also your tutors, everyone that was around you, was also very quick to support you through that. I think it's really important, and it's one of the things I mentioned in this podcast a lot, how we as teachers, we also have the responsibility to support our dancers through their health problems, instead of pushing them away, because
I was extremely lucky. Nikki and Glenn were both so supportive and protective of me. But they knew better than to tell me I couldn't do something, because that would have just made me even more stubborn.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was incredibly lucky. I had really good friends who rallied round as well during that time. And so much of my life has changed since then. I've got married. I've got a wonderful husband who's also had a stroke. And I nursed him through his stroke. So, it's a weird life. And then I'll tell you this, and you can put it in or you can't, because it's like a fairy tale. In January, John and I won the lottery.
Oh wow, congratulations.
So, it's almost like, let's give her all the things that can possibly go wrong and see what happens. And then here's a dollop of good luck at the end of it. It's the world and life is such a weird, funny place.
Oh, I think if someone deserved it, it was you, because you went through a lot. And I think, oh, that's even more inspiring, the fact that you helped your husband through his stroke as well. So it's like your experience was like a tool for you to then help someone else as well.
Yeah,
At least that's what I like to think, that our life struggles are
we try.
toolkits for helping other people. And that's really fascinating how. And I'm so happy to hear that you are okay, and you are married now. You have a husband. You seem really happy. I'm really. It's like it's a fairy tale with a happy ending. So
Yeah.
it's really good to hear this, and it's really interesting how that I was gonna say as well. And when you say that dance gave you some kind of like goal, like little goals, and made you go step by step, um and how dance has kept and your personality. That's so important, because traumatic events can really cause um, changes in personality. It can really drive down depression, and dance was just there to keep that at bay, and protect it somehow. And then is it interesting as well how you kept your boundaries as well. So
Yes.
it's that balance between, with this podcast, I don't want to say to people, dance is the cure, and just do dance, 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 regardless of your boundaries or of your health boundaries. That's never the message I want to put out there. The message I want to put out there is, even though you have health problems, you can adapt dance to yourself,
Yeah.
and try and still dance, but always respecting your own body. And I think dance does teach you that. Teaches you to respect your body, and to be aware of your boundaries.
I
So
think
it's
it
a.
makes you also aware of your body
Mhm,
because you're used to using it. You
mhm,
know when it's slightly out of kilter, and you know when you've got to stop and take a look and say, now's the time to take a little bit of rest, or now's the time to visit the physiotherapist or whatever. But
mhm,
it's important to, your body's your machine. It's your responsibility to keep it in the best working order.
mhm, mhm.
But sometimes as the machinery gets a bit older, you've just got to be a bit kinder to it.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. And that's really, you have to, because if your body's not working properly, you're not dancing properly. Your tool is not working, so it kind of like, one thing influences the other. And I just find it really interesting, your relationship with dance throughout all your life, especially throughout, recovering from the stroke, and also how you are like so stubborn, in terms of you always wanted to win and compete, and it's really fascinating, and I'm so happy you have all the support, because I know people sometimes they don't have the support. They don't have teachers and studios that will adapt, and try to make the environment as much as inclusive as it can be. Um, and that can be anything to people who may be listening to us right now, who are either going through the same thing or went through the same thing. If you have anything to say, obviously.
Sorry, I didn't hear most of that. The sound dropped.
Oh, okay. I was just asking, um, is there anything you would like to say to people who either are going through or went through the issues that you went through?
Um, yeah, it's a mindset. It's expectation and belief. If you expect that it's going to be difficult and that you're going to have problems, then that is what you're setting up an expectation, and it will happen. So it's best to have the expectation that you will get back to dance in some form, and then listening to your body as you go along, being kind and aware of your body as you go along, as you get used to your new limitations. You don't want a repetition of what caused the initial trauma. So you've got to work with a slightly altered reality. But having said that, as long as you're working within your new boundaries, there are no limits, because you get out what you put in.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And also, I like to ask, and I usually ask this in the podcast, to people who, they resistant to dance because they're self-conscious, people who are like non-dancers, and what would you say to people who are non-dancers, to kind of like motivate them to dance, to inspire them to dance? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that if they allow themselves to have a go, they will find part of themselves that they never knew existed. And then if they allow that part of themselves to flourish, it will give them a different outlook on life as well as themselves, because you see yourself differently in terms of dance. And it's not always negative, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. It's, gosh, I really stuck at it and I did do it. And I did it to the best of my ability. And, look where I am now. People say to me, you can tell you're a dancer, you walk differently. And I don't. I walk like a dancer because I'm aware of how my body moves, and I have more tone because I'm used to moving my body in a controlled manner. So yes, I walk like a dancer. That's because I know what my body can do and I'm proud of it.
Wow, I absolutely love that you say that you'll discover parts of yourself you didn't know before. Oh, I love that. And that's true how like you start, I always say, how you move, it's interrelated, neurologically, it's interrelated to how you think. So everything is interconnected. So when you move differently, you start thinking differently. And it's this relationship between motor aspects and cognitive aspects and emotional aspects.
Yeah.
Everything is interrelated, and it really changes how you see the world, but also how you walk. And I had that happening to me as well. I remember once I went to the doctor, and I was actually feeling poorly. I was in the doctor, and I sat down, and he was like, "So what do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a dancer." He was like, "Oh, already." I knew it because the way you were walking down, the way you were walking here, and I was like, "Oh my God!" It's like, is that even when I'm not feeling my best, and how your body language, you incorporate if you're not feeling your best, the way you walk is not that confident, and still like it was showing there was like some dancing there. And I think it really changes how you move, and you move in healthier ways as well, because like I used to move with my back really curved, and that's unhealthy. So now I have like a better posture, and I didn't have to work on it. It just happened. So it really, and then it gives a different image of who you are into the world, because people look at you and people have told me, "Oh, you seem like a confident person." Not because I am, but because my posture is confident. So people assume that I am confident, and it's just really interesting that you said that. And definitely, to people listening to us, that's the one of the best answers so far. You'll discover parts of yourself you never knew before. I love that. I'm gonna use it as a quote, and I'm gonna put your name on it.
Well, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Terri. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish?
No, I just hope that, something of what I've said will help somebody out there in their journey.
Oh, it definitely will. I think it definitely is helping me, and I think it will help everyone that is going to listen to the podcast. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone that is listening to us right now. Thank you for sharing this time with us and taking the time to listen to this amazing story. I really appreciate your presence in the podcast, and I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.